Hello, and welcome back to Warframe. Today, we'll be going over Nokko, the 60-second Warframe, released with the Vallis Undermind update. This guy is deceptively simple, yet surprisingly lethal when it comes to how much damage he can deal with his abilities. Additionally, his support capabilities with putting enemies to sleep and providing energy regen to allies and ability strength boosts pretty much make him a powerful contender for endgame viability. At least, I think so. So let's take a look at how his abilities work. First ability is hilariously called Stink Brain. It throws out a large mushroom that creates a radius every 3 seconds. This radius deals viral damage and puts enemies to sleep. Any mushroom that is deployed on the field can be used like a trampoline, including Stink Brain. It'll launch you straight in the air and slightly increase your double jump height after a bounce. The maximum amount of Stink Brains that can be active at a time are 4. This cannot be changed by modding. None of Nokko's mushrooms, including Stink Brain, count as summons. As such, they are currently not affected by Arcane Kamisado or Summoner's Wrath. By placing multiple Stink Brains next to each other, you can cause their areas of effect to overlap, effectively quadrupling their damage output. Attempting to throw a Stink Brain or Bright Bonnet at another active mushroom will cause it to bounce off of it and land elsewhere. While it's predictable for the first bounce, after the second, the placement ends up being a bit awkward. They tend to cluster together. Speaking of which, let's get into the second ability, Bright Bonnet, as it is pretty simplistic. Now, similar to the Stink Brain, Bright Bonnet can be thrown to deploy a mushroom that creates a pulse field every 3 seconds. This field is much larger than Stink Brain's field, only this one restores energy to allies over time and grants ability strength to anyone within the radius. Unlike Stink Brain, only 2 Bright Bonnets can be active at a time, and overlapping their areas of effect will not stack their effects. Instead, any duration will simply be refreshed. The same is true for both the energy regen and the power strength. Moving on to what could possibly be Nokko's most iconic ability, we have Reroute. This ability is a brief transformation that reverts Nokko back into a tiny sprawling form. While in this form, you can jump up to 3 times and dash, but you cannot bullet jump, crouch, or fight in any way. As a Sprawling, you are completely immune to damage. Additionally, enemies will no longer target you while in this form. All aggro towards you will drop in favor of your squad mates. You'll also recover health and shields over time while transformed, even gaining overshields. While Reroute is active, fungal orbs will begin to spawn around you. These can restore your health and grant you a speed boost. You can also see them through walls as they'll flash your energy color. Be warned that any fungal orbs that are present will vanish as soon as you leave Reroute. And now we get to Nokko's fourth and potentially most devastating ability in the form of Spore Spring. This throws an explosive fungus that bounces along terrain up to 10 times maximum, detonating every time it bounces. When it does bounce, it increases its critical chance by 25% each time. Neither the critical chance boost nor the maximum bounce count can be affected by mods in any way. As it bounces, Spore Spring will seek out nearby enemies and your deployed mushrooms, bouncing between all available targets over the course of its lifetime. If Spore Spring bounces off of any deployed mushroom, it'll double its pulse speed. For Bright Bonnet, it'll also double its ability strength. Watch what happens when I deploy 4 Stink Brains layered onto each other and throw a Spore Spring into a mess, causing large amounts of damage as a result. This is caused by Spore Spring's critical chance buff to be stacked very quickly by bouncing between all available Stink Brains as well as the target enemy in quick succession. Up to a maximum of 3 Spore Springs can be active at once. Throwing any more will remove the oldest one. I've found that a great way to start an engagement is by setting up 2 Bright Bonnets and then throwing a Spore Spring into them. and then throwing some stink brains at the bright bonnets, causing the spore spring to start bouncing to the stink brains and also to any nearby enemies, causing insane damage scaling and giving you a lot of energy very quickly. Note that in this clip, I haven't equipped a single mod that increases power strength, only armor mods to help with arcane battery for testing purposes. And finally, we have Nokko's passive, which is pretty much a cheat death mechanic, similar to Inaros or Revenant. If you have any deployed mushrooms present when you fall in battle, Nokko will revert into a sprawling form, allowing him to revive if he touches any of the deployed mushrooms. This will consume a mushroom and cause him to revive on the spot and gain a bit of immunity. As valuable as self-resurrection is, keep in mind the lengthy revival animation as well as the sacrifice of one of your mushrooms before getting back into your combat flow. So, my first impressions on Nokko. Is he fun? Is he viable? Is he meta? Well, in this day and age, meta's kinda subjective, but I'm happy to report that I'm confident Nokko will definitely be super endgame viable. In fact, I'd like to wager that someone smarter than me, who does a lot more mathematics than me, could potentially find a way to scale him into the billions of damage. It sounds ridiculous, but I'm pretty sure it could be done. Aside from that, he's pretty simple. His 1 and his 2, they're really good summons, even if they don't actually work as summons, and his 4 is very potent for scaling, and just general room clearing. My only gripe is his 3. I'm going to be honest, Reroute kinda feels like it was shoehorned into his kit. Like, yeah, it's useful for survivability, and it's great to take the aggro off of you, but there is no synergy with his other abilities. And what's more, once you leave that sprawling form, once enemies are back looking at you, then it's over. The duration is short, which makes sense since it's an invulnerability type deal, but if you can't fight, you gotta be doing something. You know, maybe give him the ability to make more bright bonnets or stink brains, or maybe make it so that way he can throw out a spore spring at the cost of some duration. Something like that. But as far as I'm concerned, Reroute is an emergency panic button that doesn't really help all too much. Like, yeah, the invulnerability does help after it ends, and the healing definitely is a thing that can help you if you have a lot of health to work with, but Nokko just doesn't. I've only really been able to make it work with maximum arcane blessing, and that requires equilibrium, which almost everyone's using these days anyway, but I don't know. We're getting into the realm of specifics, but in general, I think his 3 is the only thing that's just a little bit of the odd one out. Aside from that, the synergy is really nice, his playstyle is very clear cut, he feels like a caster, and that alone is great for me. If you want to see more Warframe content, definitely let me know. I want to thank you again very much for hearing what I have to say, and I'll see you another time. Have a good day.